Hello, this is Gary Mintchell, Editor-in-Chief of Automation World Magazine, and talking to you here on March the 18th of 2011. And it's just been over a week now that the disasters struck Japan. And this is, it's extremely serious situation. And, the last estimate I saw was they anticipate maybe 16,000 people losing their lives over there, and there are various causes and places to contribute money to help in relief of that disaster. And I've heard estimates of ranging of numbers something like $30 billion worth of insurance payouts that they anticipate doing. It was quite an impressive natural force that was unleashed on that island, and it certainly has repercussions. It certainly tanked our stock market over here in the United States, and I've seen already some news that it looks like at least one GM plant already is closing because of getting parts from Japan. So there's just tremendous. There's from the personal just agony and so on in Japan, and to economic repercussions around the world. Just goes to show how economically and actually personally and socially dependent we are upon each other now. And it's quite simply amazing. In the town where I live, there's a Honda engine plant, and so there are many Japanese that live in my neighborhood and around, and quite frankly, they're not very visible in town. You don't see them out a lot, but I see them at the Y and so on, and so they're all concerned about back home. I know some people that live over there, and we're just so interconnected, and it's such a disaster. And so many people I write to and communicate with via this blog, this video blog, are in process control, and so the general population has concerns, and then the process control people specific concerns on how this disaster hit the nuclear power generating plant along the coast, and how it was damaged quite substantially, although far from ruined. But the biggest problem turned out to be that the resulting tsunami that wiped out a lot of things, wiped out a lot of power, electrical power lines and so on. And so the plant became unable to cool, to run all their pumps and everything, to cool off the equipment. And as we all know from reading popular press, this is a bad thing. Things heat up. In fact, that's been one of the problems in nuclear power is handling the heat. I know they've put some along like Lake Erie and other places, and the heat, then they just kind of dump the heat out into the water, and then that's not good because maybe the fish can't live in that elevated temperature, and so they started killing lots of fish. And we as engineers, sometimes managers tell us to just get it done anyway, and then we're left trying to figure out how to solve problems that we've created by speeding up things. At any rate, my friend Walt Boyes over at Control Magazine and his magazine's Control Global blog site, Walt wears his emotions a lot more openly than I do. I tend to be a little more quiet, I guess, in those kind of things. And he posted a blog post in response early on to some of the almost hysteria that you could get from places like the New York Times even, and other news outlets, and especially TV, I'm told, because I don't watch any TV news whatsoever, period. But I long since wrote TV news off as just hype. But anyway, I guess it's out there. And so they're trying to stir up people against nuclear power again. And, it's easy to see why. And Walt was writing about how he, the design of the plant was to design it to be able to overcome or withstand a 7 magnitude earthquake, although this was a 9 magnitude earthquake. And it still held up pretty well. Actually, like I said, there was some structural damage, but it appears from what we can tell, that most of the damage that we're now facing is because of overheating, because the generators in the backup generators in the original power supply have all been cut off. So, but he's right. It's easy. I read one article in the New York Times, and what they did was they just dredged up every report they could find over the last 30 some odd years about what would happen if. And journalists are great at that. Okay, I realize that technically I am a journalist, but I still don't like the mass media journalists very well. And one reason is they love the story. They just go out for a story, and they try to make it as hypeful as possible to get everything worked up so people will read it, of course. And they try not to, and their idea of balance is to take one crackpot and another crackpot and put it together and say, oh, look, we've got a balanced story. And, you know, and they consult experts that really aren't experts. And so the New York Times even dredged up a thing about what would happen if that exploded and the radiation got in the jet stream or whatever. And you know, it's like, okay, you know, we can what if to death, we can point fingers to death. You know, it does that does no good. All the engineers in us say, yeah, you don't point fingers, except maybe a manager's, but basically you fix the problem. And my point is that, you know, I am really impressed with the engineers and operators that have been working in that plant for the last week, trying to contain things and keep things under control and fix things. And actually, there's a ton of other people working, the power line people, and I just saw where they have military helicopters to try to dump seawater on that to try to cool things down. They're trying a lot of things, and they're there. They're there in the place where if it were going to go boom, they would all die. So, you know, it's very, you know, it's just worth admiration for the people that are dedicating their lives to fix this problem and keep things going. And then so you could get in the hype about nuclear power, and a lot of my listeners and readers are in the oil business, but we all know that one of these days we're not going to have as much oil as we have now to process and so on, and it has to start going down. And we're still going to need an oil industry for a long time, but the dependence on that is going to go down. And even in the Middle East, without trying to get into politics, I sympathize with Iran, believe it or not, in the one point, because they realize, for one thing, they don't necessarily have lots of oil, and their brothers, because they're Persians and they may not be friendly with Arabs, don't ever just take everybody in the Middle East and group them together as one big group thing. It's not true, doesn't happen. So they may not know where their friends are, and so adding nuclear power as a way of generating electricity is not far-fetched for them, even though we think that they're sitting on just so much oil that they could use oil forever. Now, there is a political side where nuclear power, and this is, I think, what gets the general public worked up, is what do you think of nuclear power? You think of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and you know, you think of the bombs, and we equate nuclear with bombs, and it's bad, and probably from what I've read about the guy in Ahmadinejad in Iran, you know, it wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility he's also working on bombs. But I understand the peaceful use of it for generating electricity. In many ways, it is much better than trying to burn oil to generate electricity. We're burning too much oil anyway, the way things are going, and we need to develop these alternatives. So withstand the hype on the nuclear energy. We have a lot of people that I talk to pretty constantly in the industry are working on that. You know, better ways to process nuclear energy in generating electricity, and in the future we're going to need more of that. So don't get sucked into the hype and go out and tell your neighbors that, hey, I'm in process control and look at this. They actually did a pretty good job of designing this thing, and it's the weak link is coming in, and you know, I guess we write an awful lot about safety in automation world. I've written some myself, and I've gotten writers to write about it. And you can't design anything 100% safe, and journalists and other people can always point fingers and say, why didn't you do this, why didn't you do that after the fact? That's because they have never designed anything themselves. They've never actually done anything. All they do is just ask questions and write things up, and they try to write it up as with as much emotion and buzzwords as possible. And but if you're designing that stuff, you can't possibly foresee everything. You foresee as many things, and you just build with experience on top of experience, and that's how we do engineering. And so, overall, I think they've done well. They've been containing it. I just saw a tweet from Mike Boudreau of Emerson, who said that the latest that he saw was that after dumping the seawater on, that the radiation level seems to be going down. So they are working on it, and this is Friday. Who knows what Saturday's news will bring? But I stand by my my analysis, and I'm a conservationist. I'm not personally. I've been in charge of the county recycling program in my life. I've done a lot of conservation. I used to think that was conservative, but I guess now conservative is liberal and liberal is conservative. Well, get out of that. But anyway, it's just nuclear. Don't get into the hype. We're going to need it for our electrical power in the future somewhere. So anyway, that's what's going on. This week that's at the top of everybody's mind, and so don't allow yourself to get sucked into hype. Keep your objective engineering mentality going, and just kind of look at it, and just look at it with admiration that the people that designed this, the system, and the people that are operating it, the people putting their lives on the line to get it back into operation, and the next generation of designers that will look at all this and say, okay, we succeeded here and here and here, we didn't succeed there, wow, so let's go fix it, which I'm sure they will. This week I was in California on a quick trip, and I have another podcast out, Automation Minutes. I believe it's 112. That's the 112th time I recorded a podcast. And that was on SQL databases and other things like that, and talking about software. And the company I was at was Inductive Automation, and they do software as a service. And that greatly reduces, it's just like it's supposed to, cloud computing, software as a service, it reduces the cost for our HMI, SCADA, and MES software. Now, there's always some trade-offs in all this, but that looks like a coming thing to me. I think I see a lot of that. I'm looking for the next big entrepreneurial thing to pop up in the automation industry. That could be it. And I'll have more to talk about next week on video, but we have changes at Automation World. We basically had the same team for about 7.5 years that started the magazine and put it together. And then my boss for almost 13 years, Dave Harvey, passed away in September. And then last month, my mentor, who hired me from manufacturing to come in and become a writer, Jane Gerald, has left the company to pursue some other interests. The way kind of things were changing with Dave gone, and I assumed over the years a lot more editorial role, and so it just looked like time for her to go pursue some other things. And then Wes Iverson, our original managing editor, because I'm from industry, I know how the industry works and products and technologies, but I needed somebody at my side to know how magazines work, and so for the last 8 years, Wes Iverson has been the person that did the details and the nitty-gritty of putting out the magazine and getting the right style and make sure things were done properly, ethically, and all that kind of thing. And he has decided to retire and pursue some retirement, new directions, and so on. And more power to him. He's only a month older than me, and so, but I'm not ready to retire yet. Too much fun. But so a number of changes going on there, and I'll talk a little more in detail as we introduce more things. But I was thinking about the other thing I love to study is philosophy, and there's an ancient, I think I first heard it from the Greeks, but I think I've also heard it from China, the theory that the river, you got a river, and it's always changing because of the flow, but when you sit and stare at it, it always looks the same. And that's kind of like what I see going on in Automation World. We've got changes going on, but it's still the same. We still have the same mission. and the same direction, the same kind of content. We're reaching the same readers with the same kind of useful information. So that's what's going on there. More about that in the future as I explain more about how we're making those changes. I'm working on a security thing now. If anybody knows anything about NERC SIP or other cybersecurity things, send me an email, gmintchell@automationworld.com. And I'm certainly, like Bugs Bunny once said, I'm all ears. So send me in some information. And let's see, what else do we have going on? I will be at Automate. So if you're going to be at Automate, send me a note, and maybe we can stop, say hi, have a coffee or something, or a drink after the show. And then I will be at Hanover the first week of April. And so if you're going to be at Hanover, send me another note. And if you're an exhibitor, send me a note about what I should see at your stand. And if you're just going to be there, send me a note. Maybe we can meet for well, it's Germany, so a beer or something at one of the stands or afterwards or something like that. So make sure if you're around, let me know. We can meet up. Always glad to meet all of you. So that's what's going on so far. And this is Gary Mintchell, just reporting in the middle of March, and hoping you're having a good week anyway. Thanks. See you later.